Knowsley is said to be one of the poorest boroughs in Europe. Built for the you-never-had-it-so-good generation of the early 60s, 20 years on, the redevelopers appear to be engaged in a fight to the death with vandals and economic depression. There are rarely more than 20 or so job vacancies at any of the 3 job centres in the area. For each one of the 40 young unemployed who got on the coach to go to London, there were another 100 left behind. They went to London, they said, to tell Mrs Thatcher what it was like to live on the dole with little hope of a job. By all accounts, they didn't make much impact. But they did get the impression that it was felt they all ought to have jobs within the fortnight.
We will be seeing at the end of 2 weeks how many of these 25 people actually get a job, because the assumption behind that door today was that these young people haven't got jobs because they've not tried hard enough to find them.
Back in Knowsley, one of the group, Gary Williams, 5 O-levels and glowing references from the people he worked with on a youth training scheme, has just landed his first proper job. But it's only for a month, so it's back to the application forms. Did he think the Downing Street meeting had been a help?
Well, we got quite a bit of advice. It wasn't very useful, most of it. Like, for example, Mrs Thatcher suggested that we should all set up our own businesses. Obviously, it's very hard to, on very, very limited resources, which most people have in the area. She also suggested that we should, get on our bikes, to use Norman Tebbett's term, travel the country looking for work. Obviously, I mean, that's something which is, I suppose, has got to be considered. But I personally would feel very, very bitter about having to move, purely and simply because, this is my home.
Phil Dunford and Ian Skerrick say they've nothing to show for the trip either. The net gain for Ian, he says, is a persistent anonymous phone caller making indecent proposals. And the offer of 6 weeks government training as a waiter in Bournemouth. Will he take it?
No. It's not worth my while, because in 6 weeks I'll be back in the same predicament as I am now.
You don't think you might find a job down in Bournemouth while you're there?
There's always that chance, but there's always the chance I won't. I could always turn around and say, I could say, yeah, all right, I'll go down and get a job. But there's always the chance that I won't get the job and I'll be back in the same.
Phil doesn't think the schemes themselves are worth it.
Yeah, well, if they abolish schemes, there might be a chance of proper work.
But how are you going to get a proper job if you don't have the training?
Well, hopefully get a job that they train me.
Margaret Edwards, the second of the group to get work since the trip, accepts training as the only option. She started last week on a scheme where the government meets part of the cost of employing her for a year. She doesn't think Downing Street influence got her the job, though. Her neighbour, Keith Campbell's, had less luck.
I went down to the job centre to see the job centre manager, but the type of job what I want to do, there's no jobs available whatsoever, he said.
What do you want to do?
I want to work backstage as a stagehand, or preferably as an actor.
So it's not surprising the job centre can't help you?
No. Well, not as an actor. I thought they might have been able to help me as a stagehand.
Margaret, do you think Keith's right to hold out for the job he wants rather than getting any job?
Yeah, well, the schemes, they're just not worth going on now.
Even though you're doing your second scheme?
Yeah. Well, Keith will be getting more on the dole than what he get on the scheme now.
Jobs on Merseyside have been going at the rate of 10,000 a year for the last 7 years. The government thinks that the real growth area for jobs is in small business. But for most of those who went to Downing Street, that doesn't look like a viable prospect. Anne Perkins, ITN, Merseyside.